Well, I'm Dusty Deschamps. I'm a district judge here in Missoula. I've been on the bench for about 7 years now. I was the county attorney for 28 years before I retired from that and eventually became a judge. But as Dennis said, the county attorney handles most of the dependent neglected child cases. Once in a while you get the Attorney General's office involved. But even though it had been part of my overall responsibility for 28 years, I had no idea what it involved, and I really became quite aware of the whole situation when I went on the bench and realized what a huge piece of responsibility it is for judges. In Missoula, we have 4 district judges, and the all cases are basically assigned randomly to one of us, with the idea that we try to have more or less equal caseloads. Each one of us, I suppose, has our own little different values and perceptions of how the system ought to work and how kids ought to be raised and things of that sort. But all of us are burdened by the fact that in our court system, what we have is attorneys coming in and representing the various actors involved in the case. We got an attorney for the department. The parents all have an attorney. We have an attorney for the child, of course, and sometimes we've got multiple fathers involved with a family, and each one of them has an attorney. Sometimes if we've got Native Americans involved, we'll have the tribe have an attorney in the room. And so you got all these attorneys with presenting evidence and making arguments, and every one of them is an advocate for their particular point of view and their client. And it's really hard in a sterile environment in a courtroom to really get a good handle on what really is going on. You can read these reports, you can hear the testimony, but you're still taking somebody else's word for it, and all of them have a point of view and an axe to grind. Casa comes in as a neutral fact finder and advocate for the child. And I appreciate Casa because you're the only people in the courtroom that really don't have some agenda. Your point of view is what's in the best interest of the child. And you have the opportunity to do what I can't do. You can go out and you can see the homes, you can talk to the teachers, you can talk to the foster parents, you can talk to the parents, you can talk to teachers, counselors, social workers. You can go out and get all kinds of facts out in the field, and sometimes people are more straightforward and candid with you in that kind of a setting than it would be in a courtroom. And you then can get this neutral information and present it back to me in a report that we judges find to be extraordinarily helpful because it is neutral and it does have the best interests of the child in mind. And I got to tell you, most of these attorneys we spend so much time worrying about the parents and how they're doing and how they're coming along with their treatment plans and all this and that and the other thing. Sometimes nobody ever even bothers to tell the judge where the kids are or how they're doing. And it's very disturbing when you don't know about these children. And again, CASA comes in and fills that blank in for us. So you provide a vital service and one that we deeply appreciate, and I certainly appreciate all of you taking the time out of your life to get involved in the system. So that's my little 2 bits worth.
Polly, you met Polly already. So, Brian?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Bryan, and I'm a real estate broker in town here, and I've been a Casa for a couple of years now. What else you want to know, Dennis? Is that good?
Cases?
One case that's been going on for 2 years.
Oh, 2 years.
We're getting near the end, though, I think, and
And you, there was a question, and somebody had a real concern about how many cases. They said they went to our website and they saw that we had 3 cases or more cases than that at a time, and they're going, I just can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you've had 1 case over this period of time.
Dennis has been harassing me to take a second one, and I'm really close to doing that. He's really good at twisting and begging, but you know, I started doing this a couple of years ago when the real estate market was a little slower, and I wanted to do something that I thought was a public service, and I had been I've sat on several and do sit on several nonprofit boards, but I really wanted to do something that was not asking for money and where I thought might serve some good. And so I went to one of these coffees and learned about Casa and have got roped into doing it, and I'm really glad I did. And you know, the workload is probably I don't know, 3 or 4 hours a week, I'd say, tops. And there were times when it might be 10 to 15 hours in a week, but there's also times when it's 0. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's not a. I work full time and I have 2 middle school kids, so I have enough time to dedicate to this. I know I'm doing a service for the child or the 2 children that I'm working with, and it's just like Dusty said, they're 1 mom, 2 different dads, 2 different sets of needs. But it's not an unusually large call on my time, but it's something I'm really glad I got involved in and continue, and I anticipate doing it all over again really soon.
I have other cases right now that are just kind of in limbo and not a lot going on. I went to Superior today for a 1-hour meeting and then came here. But I did take case 5 because case 3 and 4 had slowed down enough that I didn't have enough to do. And then all of a sudden case 3 and 4 just kind of blew up, so I had 3 very active cases all at the same time. And right now it's not that much right now because we're just kind of waiting to see. One of my moms is in prison, waiting to see what she's going to do as far as her treatment plan. We were thinking the oldest sister was going to go into kinship care, and she went through the foster program, and at the meeting today told us that it was too big of a responsibility, so she was not going to be able to take the kids. There are no other kinship care providers, and that's really sad, but it was good to see such a young girl take that big responsibility, and she was very struck that she couldn't take her younger brother and sister, and just devastated, but very realistic, and said, you know, I'm just starting a new family myself. I work, you know, 40 to 50 hours a week. Sometimes I work through the night. I'm not a good choice. I can't do this. And then my other case that we thought only had 1 child. They were homeless at the time. She was 3 weeks pregnant with twins. So now we have 3 kids in that case, and the 2 boys are going to probably be terminated on, as mom is unable to care for the 2-year-old, let alone the twin boys. So it just depends. Each case is different. Each case has a different dynamic as far as what people are willing to disclose and how involved they want to let the CASAs be. And as far as there's different social workers that want you in the middle of everything, some don't. Some attorneys want you in the middle of everything, some don't. Some parents want you in the middle of everything, some don't. So everything has its own dynamic.
I'm Alyssa Mcclane, and I'm a retired social worker who was in early childhood development. I've been in Missoula for 2 years, and I've been with Casa for 2 years. and I'm one of the wackos with 4 cases. 2 of which Dennis promised me were easy and just going to go. He lied. One of my cases should have been adopted over a year ago, and he has not yet because they lost the paperwork in Helena. So that's been really interesting. Another one included sexual abuse. That was really interesting and went to termination of one of the parents' rights, but not the other parents' rights. The 2 active ones that I have right now, one is just kind of on hold, 2 children involved, and just kind of on hold, trying to figure out what mom's going to do, what dad's going to do, and life is just kind of going on. And then my 4th one, that was supposed to be the easiest piece of cake, Dennis, has just been a roller coaster. You know, mom's out of the picture, can't be found. We're going to foster care adoption. Oh, wait a minute, mom shows up. She wants custody back. Oh, she's doing fine. He's going to go there. Oh, wait a minute, she's out of the picture again, and on we go. So every case is different, and every case has its own rhythm. As far as what happens, it just depends. There have been months when all I've done is see my kids. Just made appointments to see my kids, and that's it. Talk to the foster parents, talk to the parent, whatever. So what, maybe, okay, 4 hours? And then there have been months when I've had all of my cases in court in the same week, and one of my cases has split, so one for the mother and one for the father. So I was in court 5 times in 1 week. And then there's all the report writing and all that kind of stuff. So it just varies. And it also varies on how much you want to put into it. You know, if there's times when it just isn't feeling right and you need to back off, you need to back off. So you can go from nothing or visiting your kiddos once a month to God knows how many hours you could put in. And the dynamics change as all the players change. Every case may or may not have a different judge, but it certainly has different attorneys that encompass it, and it has different social workers that encompasses it, and it has therapists and all that kind of stuff. And although you may work with this social worker on these 2 cases and not have her on this one, you might have a him on this one, and it becomes entirely different. So it all is also based on the relationships you form. Oh.
And you were a CASA?
I was a CASA in St. Louis County.
In St. Louis County.
Mm-hmm.
Was it much, besides the workload, was it much different?
I think the CASAs here in Missoula are much more personal, much more down to earth. It feels like I'm more interactive, and that, not necessarily that I have more power, but that I'm more involved. St. Louis, with such a large population, they really wanted just certain things done because there were kids coming and going all the time. So it didn't feel as personal. It feels much more personal here. But Missoula is also much smaller.
But you didn't have 5 cases in St. Louis?
No, I did not. No, I did not.
And
I
just
can't.
to be clear, it's all up, you're in control of this. You guys are in control.
And Dennis isn't as big of a liar.
No, you couldn't see a big S for sucker on my forehead.
Yeah, so it was extraordinary. But you are in control of which cases you get, and if you want to take another case or not. And I'll say we won't press you to do it. Well, we'll ask you maybe, but it's if a case is winding down and it looks slow, but as Alicia just pointed out, it can take off again. And Mike, same thing. And Polly, same thing.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's slowed down. You're going, yeah, I think there's a great need. I think I'll take another case. So then you take another case, and then it goes smoothly. You'll just spend 4 hours a month, and then bang, something happens, and all of a sudden you're spending 10 hours a month or 20 hours a month, or Polly is crazy.
120 hours, yeah.
It's go ahead.
Well, so from the court aspect, after you submit your report, right? Or do you ever have to testify Okay, and are you cross-examined and, okay, and what's that experience like with the, I mean, how are the attorneys? Are they just?
They're
It
attorneys.
depends on the attorney.
It's all everybody, I mean, as the judge said, they're advocates for their side, so.
Well,
I think it would.
You know, it depends on where you, how you come down on the case. And I've had.
Well, I'm sure you're gonna not make somebody happy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably true.
it's their job.
But most of these cases actually are not as contentious. I mean, they're contentious and we have advocates, but usually people come to some kind of a general consensus. But if you're coming down on the side of reunification, for example, the parents' attorneys may call you as a witness to say why you've taken this particular point of view. I think that's a little unusual. I think most of the time the CASAs tend to be the other side and tending to favor the department and the department's perspective, and I can't think of any cases where the department called a CASA to testify. It could happen, but generally speaking, if you're on the side of the department and your report supports the department's position, they'll just rely on your report. But if you're coming down on the other side, you're probably going to get on the witness stand. There's a good chance of it.
I was called for my first, because of my medical experience, and each of my boys had medical files that deep, and I had been through both of them. And I was called to testify the medical information behind my report. So, and if you come to the court and you know what you've put in your report and you know what the facts are that back that, you'll be fine in your cross-examination, as long as you don't speculate or hypothesize or anything. Stick to the facts and the facts that you bring to the case. You'll be okay.
You had experience testifying, Mike?
Yes, I did. And actually, just as Dusty said, the county attorney or the CFS workers didn't think my testimony was necessary, but I wanted to make a statement, and so I was allowed to do that. And the only rigorous cross-examination came from this fellow right here. And I'm pretty sure I can get this quote right. I think it was, "You think because somebody doesn't have money or a permanent home, they shouldn't be allowed to have children." And it was fairly spicy, but in fairness, yeah, I had I made a very assertive statement, and I felt, that Dusty cross-examined me directly because of the fact I was making this statement, and he did so in a pretty aggressive manner, but I never took any offense to that because he was, I had made some assertions that were pretty strong, and I think he had a duty to challenge, question, and really understand, why I was saying what I did. But the mother's attorney didn't say a word. They didn't have a question, but we talked for quite a bit, I think. I felt, I've been on this thing for quite a while, and it's still up in the air, and I don't know, there's going to be a decision made fairly soon about this, and I've got a pretty good idea it might not go the way that I want it to. But what I do know is that I would do it all over again, and what I'm trying to do, what I think is best in the best interest of the child. It's right, that's my job. And when I go into either court, talk to parents or other people, I always remind myself, I am Alyssa's advocate, and that's what I'm doing. And when I talk to anyone, even if they already know it, I say, I'm a CASA, I'm acting in the best interests of this particular child. I'm not getting paid for what I do. I'm doing this because I want to do it, and I think it's important. And just throwing that out, no matter who you're talking to, puts it in a framework where people tend to be more responsive than, you know, a CFS worker who's getting paid and got 100 cases. You know, I'm a real estate guy. You know, I don't do this all the time. But by throwing it out that way, you know, right from the start, and every single time, it puts it in a fairly positive light.
Yeah, you know, I need to comment on this because, and I did ask those questions, and I was kind of aggressive. And my problem in that particular case had to do not with, it had to do with the placement, which is with the grandmother. And this mother is kind of a mess. And I'm worried that this child is going to be the same kind of mess that her mother turned out to be because of this grandmother. And they're really difficult, hard cases. And but I appreciate Mike's point of view, and yeah, you know, he's probably the only guy in the room that was really kind of saying things without some like agenda, as I indicated. And if it was another situation, I'd probably be going with him hook, line, and sinker. I just don't happen to like the solution that's been devised in this particular case.
We actually, right during court, you know, there was some discussion about whether a treatment plan had been met and things, and through, 2 days of testimony, there was an understanding from the judge that she was doing pretty well, and he took the time to go through, pull out the treatment plan, and we kind of went through it line by line, and kind of evaluated really where things were, and I think he had after I was done, had a clearer understanding about what had been done or not, because when you're hearing all this testimony, and I wasn't there for all of it, but you hear from, I don't know, you heard from probably a dozen professionals and all these other folks, and it can just get into a morass of information that's hard to really get down to, you know, is somebody doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that's basically what the treatment plan is, and what, you know, we try to work hard to, you know, make the mom do it and accomplish the objectives, which is hopefully getting the child back. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to belabor that point, but.
I had a quick question. Do you guys ever end up in a situation where you have not enough CASAs to assign to cases?
Oh, yeah, right now.
And then are you and Kirsten stepping in and taking those on, or they just don't get CASAs assigned at that
They
point?
don't get CASAs assigned. They're in limbo as far as our program's concerned until they get freed up. Mm-hmm. You know, with the CASAs we have all our CASAs have cases, many times more than one. But they're all occupied. And so we have about 16 cases now that could use CASAs, and we don't have a CASA to fill, and that's where you come in.
So hurry up.
So hurry up. Right.
Does the judge, one of the 4 judges, make the final decision in all
Yes.
these cases?
Now, our decisions can be appealed to the Supreme Court.
Oh.
And they normally don't reverse because these things are so fact-driven that the trier of fact, which is the judge, we don't have juries in these cases. Unless you're just totally out in left field someplace, they're going to defer to your findings of fact. Now, maybe you made some procedural screw-up along the way, and they might send it back, say, do it over again, or fix this, but the decisions are almost always uphill.
And that's an important point, I think, in that This, as I mentioned before, it's a real team effort. You have social workers, you have therapists, you have educators, you have a whole team of people that you're working with and you're getting information from, and then you're writing this report to the judges. And it can carry quite a bit of influence, but never. But you shouldn't feel like you're the one determining the outcome. You're not. You're saying, here's what I'm seeing, here's what my concerns are, here's what I would recommend, and then it's up to the judge. So it's not up to any attorneys or CASAs or therapists. It's up to the judge, and he is going to make his best assessment of all the information and then make a decision, and then that's the way it is. And so you should be able to sleep at night. So it's not like you are going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know,
I'm the one that has to.
He's the guy. He's the decider. So.
But you also do need to remember that it doesn't always come down to what you recommend.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you've got a couple decisions to make. I'm not going to sleep tonight, and I'm going to fuss with this, and I'm going to make myself crazy, or I did the best I could. There's nothing else I can do. It's not up to me. It's up to the judge. But it doesn't always come down the way you recommend it.
Take it from there, Kate.
And I'm Kay. I am a huge pain in the ass to a lot of people. I only have one case. So I'm like, I don't know, the underachiever of the group. I'm a former state's attorney from Metro Atlanta that took away kids. And when I moved here to get my master's degree in public health, I started doing CASA work. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's really never a dull moment. I've had a lot of fights with the social worker. I've had a lot of fights with dad's attorneys. And spent a lot of time obsessing about those fights, I guess. But in the end, I really do feel like the kids are getting their best interests met currently. Mom's in drug treatment. Dads are, kind of all over the place. The one parent that was doing well is no longer doing well and is back in jail for drug use. So, it's kind of an ongoing battle. But the kids are great, and they're all in awesome foster homes, so yay.
When you say fights, what do you mean? Describe what the process is.
With the dad's attorneys, it was mainly, that after my first report was written, that was kind of when everything started to hit the fan, I guess, because the dads weren't doing what they needed to be doing to establish any sort of relationships with their kids, anything like that, and I put that in my report, and I got a lot of calls about that. The social worker...
Before you glaze over that.
I'm sorry.
Okay. I practiced, right? And I still practice. And when I get attorneys on the other side that are nasty to me, I go, put it in writing, click.
Don't do that.
All right?
But
that's what is the technique? If they're not happy with what you've done, you're saying, in God's honest truth, I know you have to develop a relationship, but what are the tools you guys use to do that? Because
everybody's...
I don't like to put up with somebody yelling at me.
Well, everybody's got their own styles. I usually let them yell at me, and then once they're done, I say, well, these are the facts that I used to come to the determination that I made. If you don't agree with them, you have an avenue with which to dispute that. Pleadings. You don't have to call me and yell at me. I've got all those facts in my report. I'm repeating them to you here. So, bring that to the judge if you're really having a problem with that. And I have never heard anything that I've said disputed in court. Ever.
And I've never
So they're calling to browbeat you.
Yes, they just want... it's all about pressuring.
I have never been yelled at.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never been
yelled at. She's nicer than I am.
But that doesn't mean I don't get people saying... What? You think what? So I get their frustration. I get that. But I've never had them yell at me. And I've never felt inadequate. I guess I take the feeling that if I've got him or her frustrated, I must be doing something right. And if there's only one of them being frustrated with me, I must be doing okay. But have I felt like people wanted me to change or wanted to question where I came from? Yes.
And I think you just have to be confident in what you've figured out through your own investigation. You know, you have a unique position that nobody else in the case has, where you can go talk to people that won't talk to anybody else. You can get records that nobody else can get. You know, you can see all sorts of stuff, and you have a very, very unique position also where you have like the purest intentions, I guess, of everybody working on this, you know, like.
And remember, you're there for the child. You're not there to get caught up in.
No, I understand that, which is why my first instinct
easy to do, though.
I mean, what? Unless I have to develop a relationship with you, click. You know, I mean, so that's why I'm asking
people that you work with are not the attorneys, but I would assume that the majority of people you work with, they are in a crisis stage.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, you are making big decisions about, you know, the next steps in their lives.
The judge is making those decisions.
Yeah.
True.
I'm just talking about them. You know, I think, everybody is in crisis. You know, all the parents are, the kids are to some extent, you know, to a very large extent. It just, I mean, you kind of have to let people talk, I guess.
Some of these people really get emotionally involved. And if you get into this very far, you'll figure out who some of these people are.
Fair enough.
And I've seen situations that literally almost came to blows. I had to stop it and send everybody out of the room. One attorney was standing up and getting right in the face of the other one, and it was ugly.
And then you also need to remember that the attorney you might be fighting with right now is going to be your best friend on the next case.
It's true.
She touched on something that was one of the reasons I think I'm interested in this role, is that you're actually an officer of the court. Can you talk about what that really means? Because that's a big deal, I think. You're not just, you know what I mean? The authority you have.
You're appointed.
Yeah, you have a lot of authority.
You're sworn in after your training.
Yeah.
And you're given an appointment by the judge to go out and retrieve information regarding any of the parties in this case that are pertinent to the well-being of that child. And you have access to documents that other people have to wait months to get. You can walk in with that piece of paper and get that document. And it's a huge responsibility. And you have to be really professional in the way that you handle that amount of responsibility. Otherwise, you lose the respect of everybody else in the case, and nobody works well together. So the way that you handle yourself and the responsibility that you're given is going to establish your working relationships in the court. When I first started, I had a very contentious defense attorney that went to Dennis and tried to get me thrown off my case. She behaved badly in court. I wrote her up with her supervisor and asked him to discipline her. That didn't go well. Next time she went to court, she attacked me in court. Of course, I wasn't there to enjoy it, but they told me what happened. But nothing came to it, but her emotions were running so high that she had lost her professionalism in regards to me during this case. So it was my job to bring it back to her attention and to the other team members. I have one job in this case. Those babies and their sister need a safe place to go home to. They need a safe place to be raised. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm not here to point out, to fight with you. But if you're going to misbehave badly and you're going to attack Grandma and Grandpa in the courtroom, you've got my attention. And I'm going to spank you. And that's what I did. And it created a working environment that was not conducive between that attorney and I. However, case number 3 for me, she's my best bud. Hated my guts on case 1. Case 2, case 3 were friends. So, but that responsibility and how you handle it is going to determine your working relationship in the court system.
You know, it runs the spectrum. you've got some people some attorneys that just sit there like a bump on a log and don't do anything. And often as not, it's attorneys for the child. I mean, I see these attorneys for the child, and they're very passive in most cases. And once more, that's a good reason to have CASAs involved. At least you got somebody in there that's paying attention to this child and advocating their point of view. So you're going to see everything from soup to nut.
I'm Charity. I see you guys have the pamphlet, so you can read all about me in there. I actually have 2 cases. Yes, they're off and on, so that definitely happens. I've slowed down a little bit. I was a little bit more actively involved while I was pregnant, and I have a 2-month-old now, so I'm lucky enough to be able to stay at home with my kids, and so that's why I got involved with CASA. And I was one of these kids, so it would have been nice to have a CASA growing up, but that did not happen for me, but I ended up in a good state, and Montana definitely cares about their kids, and so I wanted to give back. I've been fortunate. My foster parents are Mike and Leslie Halligan, and Leslie is now a judge, and so I had the opportunity to be with 2 good people that kind of raised me well, so yeah. Now I have 2 kiddos of my own that keep my hands full, and I have 4 kids on my CASA cases, and they're all really little. And it is difficult to see these kids go through what they're going through, but it's important to remember that the work that you're doing makes a difference, even if you don't feel like it does, and there's times that you will feel that way halfway through the case and something happens and your kids are in a foster home or a group home for a long period of time. I have one little kid that's been in Watson's for a year. It's a temporary shelter for 30 days, so that's just an example of how things go on these cases. So mom came back from treatment and now she's back in jail, so yeah. So I will update you on that, Dennis. But yeah, so it's a roller coaster. They were going really well. I went on like a 1.5-month maternity leave and actually had to come back because a lot of the team members depended upon what my resources were, because you do have a lot of power in your cases. And it's important to remember that, but not to abuse it. And as a caveat to Mike's statement about, he's just a real estate agent and you express that you're a volunteer, it's very important to let them know that, but don't let them walk on you just because you are a volunteer. I've had that experience a couple times where the treatment team will look at you and say, oh, you're just a volunteer, and thank you for your information. You have a lot of information that's useful to the team. So, and each one of you guys, I don't know where your backgrounds are from. I'm a sociology and psychology major, so my background is in child psych and sociology, and so Kay's an attorney. She's got experience in that, and it's super important to utilize that. Don't overstep your bounds with it, but utilize what your background is and why you're here. And you have 30 hours of training that you're going through, so just remember that.
Also, make sure you brought up team members. Make sure you use your team members. One of the techniques I use all the time is, what can I do for you? And I find that a lot of times they will say, can you please get this? I've tried 3 times and I can't get it. And I can just waltz in with my piece of paper, my cute little smile, and I get it. So use your team members as they're also using you in a professional manner. But you do have the ability to get lots of things that they can't.
Charity, your case right off the bat, when you said your child was in Watson's for an
and still is.
Because when you think of time frames for us, we could think of a year. Well, I can do anything for a year. 6 months, not a big deal. But for a kid, a week, a month, 6 months, a year, that's an eternity. So
it is, and it's damaging too. I mean,
so damaging.
This little boy was 3 when he went in, is now 4, and I mean, typically speaking, you don't want to assess and give a clinical diagnosis to a child that's under the age of school age typically. But because he's been in a shelter care that is pretty much hands-off, Watson, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Watson's, but Watson's is very hands-off. They don't provide nurturing relationships because they don't want the kids to get attached to the staff that are there because it's supposed to be short-term. And when you have that environment going on with a 3/4-year-old for a year, this child's not getting everything they need. Yes, they're getting their basic needs met, but they're not getting it all, what he should be getting. And now we're looking at, oh, well, he needs to go to foster care. So, yeah.
And tell them a little bit about the process you had with the caseworker, where we're talking about part of our role is to kind of move things along so that they don't get stuck someplace.
Well, that's what I was going to say is why did it take so long?
That's not to excuse why he's been in there for a year. A lot of it, it's the DOC, Department of Corrections takes forever. Mm-hmm. Mom was sitting in jail for a very long time before she went to treatment, so we didn't know where she was going to go. So, long story short, by the time she got out, 8 months had rolled by. We wanted to reunify. We did, because we really, truly, she had 5 children taken away prior to this that are all in different spaces, either with biological father or in foster care. The reason why we wanted to reunify is because Mom had never had treatment. She's always been jailed. And so it was important to not terminate her parental rights, and I definitely feel like she could do it. She did not abuse her kids physically. It's more neglectful because of her own substance abuse, and she's very, very, she likes to hurt herself in a lot of ways. So, but with that being said, it was definitely when she came out, consistency is key, and she was not there, and she wound back up in jail 2 weeks ago. So she's going to be sitting in DOC in jail for quite some time before she gets a spot in a treatment facility. So at this point, who knows what's going to happen. But my recommendation, which I've made clear to everybody, is going to be to push for these kids to be in foster care, and hopefully it's going to be concurrently, and look at termination down the road. So just because of the situation. So yeah.
Concurrent foster care, what's that?
That means long-term care looking to adopt. And what you guys will learn about is the Child Safe Families Act, where kids who have been in foster care for 18 out of the 22 months that they're in, the state pushes for adoption. So this is definitely beneficial to the kids. It is. But it can also hinder a lot of things, too, because there are parents that, Department of Corrections takes forever to get them through jail to treatment. And that 18 months is going to come up real quick. And so I'm on the fence about it, but I definitely think that it's there for a reason, especially for little kids like the ones that I have. So it's gonna benefit them a lot. So, and sometimes the judge doesn't always lean in the way you want them to. So,
and the 12 months at Watson's doesn't count for any of that time.
It will, actually, yeah. And so
anytime they're out of their parents' care,
it's when they're temporary legal custody with the state. So, yeah, and at first the CFS worker wanted to terminate, and who knows what she's going to do now, but we were all on even keel for quite a while and in agreement, but I think that this has kind of uprooted a lot of that. And your treatment team, as much as it can be cohesive, it can be very polar too. It can go in a lot of directions.
I hear a lot of the conflict that goes on between the parties and the interest in, is there anything, if you're advocating for the child, and maybe we'll learn all this, are there things that you can do to say, hey, judge, we need to get some people moving along here? Does that happen?
Yeah. You say stuff in court.
Yeah, Dusty he'll ask.
Yeah, I'll try to move it, but
you don't know what's going on.
Oh, it's like herding cats. Seriously, there's so many obstacles and reasons and delays that drives me crazy. Why can't you get this stuff done?
I've said stuff in court. Just say You know, when the judge says CASA, what do you think? Say, I think they need to be in a foster home. Social worker. You know, I mean, that's stuff.
Okay, so we're not that far.
What? No, we're probably pretty similar. But, you know, I mean, like my kids were in Watson's for a year too, or 3 of the 4 of them. And they were 6,
Is there another
8, and 10.
treatment facility besides Watson's where they could be in, where they
It's
get a
not a
little bit
treatment
more?
Yeah, that's
It's
like
a
a
holding
treatment
tank.
facility.
But when they
you
get
can't
more,
get
I meant
movement.
where they could get more hands-on. I understand what Watson's does because of the 30-day thing, but is there some other place that
Group
kids?
Oh yeah,
can-
there's lots of options. It's actually getting somebody to move them in that direction.
It's just hard, and it depends on who's on your treatment team, like how easily they are able to be motivated to help you out. I mean, they've got tons of cases.
I'd like to speak out to just this question about escalating tempers and trying to move things forward, particularly as it relates to CFS. And what I've found is using email is a really good technique to get your point across and keep it somewhat impassioned. And it works well with CFS because one of the things that you're able to ask early on is who is your supervisor. So, you know, if I've asked twice on the phone and getting nowhere, you know, writing emails and then the second email CCing a supervisor and then second request, third request, you know, still looking for this, you're creating a documentation trail that somebody realizes without even threatening. You know, it's like, hey, there's a paper trail for what I'm asking for, and it works really well, and somebody might not like it, but you don't have to yell and scream, and so it's something I think is very useful, and knowing who the manager is the way to do that.
I CC everybody on the team as long as they're privy on the information.
Yeah, I always CC the supervisor for my social worker now, because she just doesn't respond to me if it's just me and her. So
Sometimes you have to do that.
That's really good, and I really appreciated Charity too, because Charity, and well, most of you do. Well, all of you. When you CC the supervisor, you also CC us.
Oh, I remember that.
So that we're in the loop and we know what's going on, we know what you're going through, and so when you call us or come in and talk about it, we know what's happening. Or if a supervisor calls us and goes, what's going on with this CASA? We got you covered. So the communication that you're having with all the parties, if you include us with that's just very, very, very helpful. Thank you very much. And just to be clear too, Watson's, nobody here is saying that Watson's is not a great place.
Oh.
No. Just to be clear, it's a wonderful, wonderful facility. It provides just a fantastic service to the Missoula community. But it's designed for a short-term deal. It's not meant to be 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, because they're not trained to do that, number one. They're not supposed to get into relationships with kids to the degree where they start attaching, because they're short-term. So it's just a tough deal when, and again, this is where we come in, where CASAs really come in to really say enough already. And Charity's been trying to do that for a year.
Yeah,
trying to move it along. And there's different things come up, just as the judge said. And they need to be dealt with. You can't just go like this. Well, you got to consider this. And as I was saying before, it's very complex. There's so many different things.
So where did the attorneys for the kids come from? Are they court appointed?
Well, they all come via the Office of Public Defender.
Right.
It's all paid for by the Office of Public Defender, which at the present time is state-funded and underfunded, really scrambling for resources. But the Office of Public Defender typically has one of their staff attorneys represent one of the parents, usually the mom, but sometimes the dad. As soon as that happens, then the rest of the staff has a conflict. So they contract all of these other representations out to private attorneys that work on a contract. And there's kind of a nucleus of people that do this. And you know, some of them are very nice people, but not very effective. Some of them are real aggressive. There's some of them that are kind of in the middle that probably are the best ones, but that's where they come from.
The parent's attorney on one of my cases, this is his first DN case, but I have had the opposite experience too, that the children's attorney are the only ones that are staying involved besides the CASA. So
yeah, I have the same experience. My children's attorney is awesome.
Miss Dory Natnor, she was really amazing.
Well, you see, and of course, what I see of this is what I see in court. And they may be way more active out in the field than they appear in court.
Is there a consensus among, I know every case is different, but is there a consensus among you, six, I guess, all of you, as to what is the most significant thing that holds these cases up? Is it an institutional situation where you got all these legal, or is it these relationships, or is it a department, or is it a team member?
Well, you know, I don't think there is you shouldn't, the goal isn't to have it just get settled as quickly as possible. Because some of the stuff...
I mean, it kind of
well,
was.
it is, but what I'm saying is, it could take a year to percolate to give somebody a chance to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, you just can't come in, stamp something, and get it on. You know, so... Go ahead.
Well, if you've been listening to our discussion, you haven't heard anything about baby rapers. You haven't heard anything about people beating their kids up. What you've heard about is poverty, lack of education, and substance problems. And it's hard to deal with those things. And it isn't something that you can just flick a switch and everybody's got a job and education and they're clean and sober.
Takes time to get support in place for those parents and have them start working their plan.
And create a safe environment for the kid. Right. I mean, it doesn't happen.
It also takes time for those parents to show what they can do. You know, 6 months is, for the most part, most of these parents who've had their children removed can hold it together for 6 months. Get on board, I'm going to do this. But at 9 months, you might be seeing a whole lot of stuff that isn't quite holding together. I mean, like I said, my roller coaster case. You know, we're going on 18 months now. She's been gone 3 times in this child's life. She's been in rehab twice, and she's been doing great when she gets out of rehab. And boom. Which, you know, I'm saying is a very clear indicator that she cannot parent this child over the long haul. But if I had made my recommendation and the court had said this is the way it is, at 6 months when she came back into this child's life, it looked really pretty. So time is necessary.
That's my personal opinion. I think sometimes there's too many people involved, and everybody has good intentions, I think, but I think I mean, obviously, yes, the time, you want to give them time, but I think sometimes when it comes to this, there's just too many people involved, and you don't need all these people, and it's ridiculous.
And it's kind
and
of...
it's true, sometimes, like...
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, too. Like, I feel like... I mean, I don't think any of the parents on my case can parent their kids right now. None of them. But sometimes I feel overwhelmed for the mom in particular, because I feel like if I were given this list of things to do, it would freak me out. But I didn't have a kid removed from my home. So, you know, like I've never put myself in that position, I guess. But at the same time, that's a lot of stuff for them to finish. And so I think when you say there's a lot of hands in the pot, there's a lot of...
Well, you're taking parents that generally have poor coping skills in the first place. It landed them in the situation that they're in, and giving them a large task of overwhelming things to do, and they already can't cope with what has happened to them. So it takes time to help everybody, to put everybody in a place, to support them like legs under a chair. And if you knock one of those out, they're on the floor again. So it takes time.
I mean, the social worker in my case was making like a calendar for the mom with butterflies on it, because she really likes butterflies. And she thought that would motivate her to look at her calendar. And it did, until she started using meth again. But, you know, like, for that like week or 2 or 4, I can't remember how long it was, she was everywhere she was supposed to be because she had this calendar with butterflies on it, because that was where she needed to be met at that particular moment. So, yeah.
You had a question?
Well, I had a couple of them. One is as I was reading the stuff for today, it talks about how, like, you know, you can't bring them to your home, you can't. Can you assist them in getting to places, like provide transportation to get them to there? Or is that something the social worker's supposed to? I mean, it seems like if you're gonna give these people all these tasks to do, at least you do is give them the tools to do. The other question I have is, I do some stuff with the Veterans Court, and I'm just wondering, do you have like some kind of mechanism or any kind of a relationship with the VA? I know they have like a lot of different anger management, different stuff that's already funded by the
We have contract service providers that they typically at CFS works with that provide anger counseling, parental guidance counseling, circle of security, supervised visitation. These are people that typically work with CFS and are contracted with them as members of these treatment teams that come in and offer these services to the parents to help them meet the requirements of their treatment plan.
I guess what I'm getting is, I noticed a lot of times that these guys are, a lot of these guys coming back from Iraq are having issues with the drugs and other things, PTSD and that. What it seems like they're finding out until they get into the court system is that they don't know that they have things available to them through the VA. And I'm just wondering, like, you get some of these people in ours, can we refer them before, or I guess at this point it's probably too late to do any of those kind of things.
Well, so you're here for the kid, right? And that's right. Our primary function as a CASA is to be there for that child. But what's important to remember is that these parents love their kids. Yeah. And what they've done, whether it's abuse or neglect, like, there are some sick people out there who intentionally do harm to other people because they like to. But a lot of times in these cases, that's not the case. And no, you don't have to go to that extreme to be there for the parents, like, on as much as you are for the child, but it's helpful because I feel like, and this is a generalized statement about CFSs, I feel like their treatment plans set the parents up to fail sometimes. They give them all these tasks. They don't know how to get to these places. They don't know where they're located, number one, what their services are. They don't know if that's it, if there's more help. And as a CASA, you can be there to help with them. You don't want to enable them, though. There's a fine line between helping them and getting them there and enabling them. Because a lot of times, at least in one of my cases, the mom would have appreciated that if I would have enabled her. But I told her about these services, and I wanted to wrap my arms around her and get the treatment team involved, and we were. But that doesn't always help either. I mean, she's back in jail. So, and yeah, I mean, to answer your question, like, it seems like that is the case, is until they get in the system, they don't know that these services exist. But I guess I don't know how you would get that to somebody prior to them ending up in the system. So,
just a couple thoughts and then, like, questions. So, yeah, so you guys, CASA is there to support the child and, really look at the best interest of the child. But I just think in some of the cases that when I was involved as a social worker where, it's so hard because then there's a dad involved for you guys and there's a mom involved. And so, you're trying to, like, provide them with all these services and giving them the tools, really empowering them to make, to utilize the tools on their own. But so you try to focus on the child, but at the same time, you are working with mom and dad. And how do you keep that balance, especially when maybe mom's fulfilling her treatment team, but dad's not? Like, do you work, like, it just seems like a really tough balance to hold, because then you might not end up being neutral, really, if you start working more with mom, maybe,
That's where the whole team is involved. And you can speak to their attorney and say, look, I'm looking at your clients, how they're working their treatment plan. They're not living up to it on this end. If dad wants more visitation, he's got to step up to the plate. So that's where you communicate with the other members of the team that may have a closer, more influential relationship with that particular parent. Or you can have that relationship yourself with that parent and sit down.
And you also just look at them as individuals. They aren't a unit.
And
they're individuals. Dad has a treatment plan, mom has a treatment plan. All the facts that you would use for one, you use for the other. And it comes down to the same thing. she isn't, he is, or the opposite, whatever the case may be, by the facts.
And you also, I mean, at least in my case, I've found that I've made myself equally available to all the parents, and some have taken advantage of it, and some haven't. You know, I mean, and one parent in particular, their attorney will not allow me to speak to them without her present. Now, I don't have to follow that rule, but I do because he's really hard to track down anyway. Nobody knows where he is right now. But, I mean, generally speaking, the parents have chosen how to be involved with me, too.
I often ask my parents, like, do you have any questions about your treatment plan? Like, I check in with them pretty regularly. One of them's in prison, and I say, you know, hey, have you gotten your treatment plan, your revised one? Do you have any questions? Is your attorney answering your questions? Is the CFS worker there? Just, I mean, really basic like that. And that seems to help, like, as something to do, you know, if you're looking at
So do you go to the detention center to see him?
Oh, no, I don't go down to the prison. I've been there for a visit, but like I said, I have 2 kids, so I wouldn't down there. But the mom on my case was in jail in Flathead, so I did travel up there. But yeah, just checking in, I think, with the parents and trying to, you know, keep the unit, like, just communication, I guess, is what keeps it from leaning on one side or the other. At least in my experience, it hasn't.
And it seems like some of the stuff that you do then is almost like referrals and case management in a way, while you're sitting down.
Well, in a way, yeah. It isn't, but in a way, it is. Yeah. And one of the questions that Brian, you had said some friends gave you some questions, and I have them here, and they're all being covered pretty well. But one of them was, how is a CASA different, along those lines? How is a CASA different than a social worker?
Payday.
The state is, the social worker is obligated to follow the guidance of the state laws, and that is to look towards reunification or permanent placement within, 15 to 22 months. And they have to work on all of the aspects of the family, best interest of mom, best interest of dad, best interest of child, what's in the state's best interest, and we are looking at best interest of the child.
And the state has an attorney too, which is the county clerk's office. So, yeah, and they also follow through with keeping in mind with that.
And you brought up access. You're saying, okay, with your attorney, one of the parents' attorney is saying, I want to be there when you interview that parent. And then these aren't criminal cases, but there are. I guess it'd be best if you would describe that, Judge, about if there's a criminal charge, it's not at the DN case, but if the parent is.
Yeah, well, they have, a lot of these people do have criminal problems, and in fact, sometimes what triggers a DN case is somebody goes to jail, but they have a right to remain silent, and I think the attorneys might be worried that they might say something that would incriminate them, and there's no confidentiality between the CASA and the party. So that might be part of what motivates them. The other thing is, some of these attorneys just want to be involved, even if there isn't a criminal case, to make sure that their client isn't saying something that might hurt their interest. There could be a variety of reasons.
But we'd be within our authority to talk to them. They wouldn't have to talk to us, obviously, but
yeah,
we
I
could call them.
could.
We'd call them.
If I could find this guy, I could totally talk to him.
No, but Dennis, that's different though from what you told me, right? With my case with Lisa, because he has a criminal case, and Lisa is the attorney for both the criminal and the DN. And okay, so in that case, like, I still, right? I can't talk to him because he's got this guy on my other case. It's a sex abuse case. The attorney took over for the DN case later. So she's the attorney for both, and she's advised that I not speak with her client without her present. So that trumps, the criminal case trumps the DN case.
That's right.
So I cannot do it.
So
That's
how
right.
often does a CASA get called into a criminal case to testify?
Doesn't, not in my experience.
I've never seen it.
No.
Not to say it
You know,
couldn't.
So,
See, and
so
that-
they're
and that's
being
a very-
overly cautious then.
That's right. We want to, the attorneys want to make sure, and then we want our CASAs to know that there's a reason why that attorney's protecting their client for that criminal proceeding. So, and where I'm going to get a little confused is the DN case, everything's confidential, it's sealed. So is it technically, if a parent that has a criminal charge says something in the DN case that really is damaging in the criminal case, is that?
Well, the county attorney claims they've got a wall in their office, and there's no information flows between the two sides of the wall. But you know, I'm not convinced. And I guess the situation would be let's say you've got a case where it's abuse. Somebody has physically, allegedly physically abused a child. That could be a situation where that parent might make damaging admission to a CASA or a social worker or somebody like that. And I think it's not impossible to believe that information, you might write it down in a report.
Yeah.
And it could leak over to the criminal side of the county attorney's office, and yeah, if somebody made an admission to you
Yeah, they use
that
it.
they committed a crime, you could find yourself on a witness stand in a criminal case. I haven't seen it happen, but I can sure see how it could happen.
Is it with being an officer of the court, can you speak to the probation or parole officer of a parent and have access to the information such as the PSIs and things that are in an offender field file? Is all of that, because that's typically not public
Yeah, but I think you could
information.
probably what you'd need to do would be get a court order. And if I'm aware that there's a criminal case with a PSI in it that relates to, I don't care if it's a DN case or a divorce case or you know, I'll get that criminal file and open a PSI and look at it because it's a goldmine of information.
What's
Exactly.
PSI?
Yeah.
It's a pre-sentence
Pre-sentence
investigation.
report, and it's done in felony cases by a probation officer. And it includes criminal history, social history,
Psychological.
education history, psychological stuff, medical stuff, defendant's version of the crime. You know, there's just a lot of information in there that's collected by these probation officers. And they're given to judges then at sentencing. And the judges rely on those pre-sentence reports in making decisions about sentences in criminal matters. And of course, people, those things, once they've been sentenced, then it goes in the file, and they might show up later in some other context. And you get that file and pull out that pre-sentence report, and
Like when you run for public office?
well,
Most of
no,
these guys
I
aren't
don't
going
know. I
to
suppose it's, I can't think of any felons that have run for public office.
be DN parents.
But-
They become felons when they're in office.
Yeah.
They become felons after.
Yeah, later.
But regardless, I think that the CASA could get a hold of a pre-sentence report if they ask for it. You got a court order.
The reason why I ask is because I work over at the jail for the state of Montana, and we frequently will have fathers have to do vision at hearings for custody cases and things of that nature, and that's what brought it to my mind is that information available to a CASA if you go to the probation and parole officer. Now, obviously, I'm gonna have some professional contact there if there's a particular case.
I don't think that you're gonna just walk into adult probation and parole and have them hand over a PSI. But if there's something in there that you think you need, I think you could come to the court, and if you made a case to the judge that was compelling, showing a legitimate reason to look at it, I think that the court would probably give you an order. The court might just give it to you without going through the.
Right. The general rule of thumb is that, I mean, that the order that you get from the judge gives you really access to so much information that you wouldn't think that you would have. But so generally we'd say, make your request. If you know there's a police report or there's some information someplace with a probation officer or whatever, you make your request. And then, and if they refuse it first, we run it by us. And then if we think it's compelling, like the judge is saying, then we can approach the judge and say, here's what we're looking for. And if it's reasonable for them to say, then they'll get it first.
No, I'm
So,
asking for a warrant.
and
I haven't had any problems getting information, including from probation and parole. So,
Well,
I mean, even calling down there, I'm just like, oh, I'm the Casa, and they tell me everything. So, I don't know that they're supposed to, but.
I will say that we won't give out information, because
I know.
with advocate privilege, we figured that out with Kirsten, like, we're not required, even if we get a court order, to give out any information, unless there's written consent.
Where at?
With the YWCA.
Oh,
Because we
yeah.
fall under advocate privilege, which is a statute in the state of Montana. So, I mean, yeah, if you're working with somebody who's giving you consent because they feel like, you know, any of the case information, while they were maybe staying at our shelter, would be beneficial to their, you know, to their situation, then I just turn it back and say, like, yeah, if she agrees to that, then I'll pass it on.
What privilege?
Advocate privilege.
Yeah, it's a new-
Okay, so attorneys,
It
somebody
was-
give me
I
the.
it
think
was new
it's
to us.
similar to the psychologist, it's actually similar to
police
the
privilege?
attorney-client
Like-
privilege.
So the
Yeah,
idea
clergy
is
privilege
that
kind of.
as an advocate for a person who's experienced violence, we as an advocate, like even if they're if it's court ordered, cannot release any information that, you know, was released in what came up in our work relationship with a participant, either the shelter, a domestic violence program, a rape crisis center. And so states are different, but Montana is one state that has advocate privilege as a statute. So, which is really neat because.
If you look under privileges in the code, you'll see it. And I think it's very similar to the attorney-client.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you know, therapist, I mean, I'd heard of those,
Yeah, it's
but
a
I'd never
victim.
heard of advocate privilege.
It protects the victim.
Right.
In that case.
How many states have that? Just out of curiosity.
Quite a few, I think.
But again, you know, make your requests, and then, as in this case with the Y, we made the request, it wasn't forthcoming, I followed up. She put me in my place, so, but do make the request, and then we'll just take it where we can. With the access to parents, now our order will give you access to the child regardless. So you can have, if the attorney is digging in their heels, the order says that, you know, like through it with courtesy, the professional courtesy, you let the attorney know that you'd like to meet with the child and when would be a good time. And if they want to be there, that's fine. Usually they want to check you out and make sure you're not a wingnut and that you know what you're about. And so then when they know they can, that you're comfortable, you're in the right place, and you're doing your job, then usually you have free access.
This is the attorney for the child.
Attorney for the child. Attorney for the parent, except for like in criminal cases that we were talking about, if they, it happens fairly often where you want to make an appointment to meet with the parent. They say, well, how about next week? And then it doesn't happen, and they put you off again, and it doesn't happen. Then we go to the judge and we say, I've been trying, as Mike was saying about paper trail, you know, document what you're doing, and then we take it to the judge, and the judge goes, you're in. Because we do have access to those parents.
I've never
With
had
or
to go
without
through,
the attorney.
I've never had to go through an attorney to meet a parent, though.
No,
In
but
any of-
it has
in
happened.
any of
It-
my
Oh, I've done it in all, I've had to in all of my
I
cases.
haven't had to do in 5.
Or all of my cases, I've only had one.
It has happened. And we respect them, again, we want to show professional courtesy, but if you're not getting progress, then we have an avenue to get to those.
One of you guys mentioned confidentiality, so you're not bound to confidentiality with, from parent to parent maybe, or what is that, or did I get
Well, you
that wrong?
are in
You-
some ways, like,
Don't
I
share
mean,
medical information. that's
yeah,
fine.
like there's. So I mean, I guess everybody on the treatment team, it depends upon the information, essentially. Like I have, for example, I'll just give you an example. So I'm working with Western Montana Mental Health. We have a case manager for one of the kiddos on my case, and their siblings, and I can't tell her about the little boy, but I can about the little girl, for example. So I don't CC her in some emails, but I do in others. She comes to our treatment team meetings, so she hears about it, but like I don't give her information on one of my children on my case.
So like if mom told you something,
If it was relevant to the kid that she has,
you could bring that to the treatment team and
yes.
okay.
Yeah.
That's an important point.
Wouldn't it be
Because no secrets. It's like no secrets. So you're privy to a lot of information. You get a lot of information that's not coming from elsewhere. And one of the worst things is when you surprise people. You go, it's like an aha. You know, and so you might go to court and you have this information, you've had it for a while, and you present it, and everybody's going, you know, why didn't you tell us? You know, you're being a team member and whatnot. So one of the big things is no secrets. Whatever we find out, we share. The confidentiality part, you know, we're very cognizant of that, but as part of the team, you share what you get with the team.
And that would be an example of something that would set something back, like even further, because attorneys do not like that, and they will be like, no, I'm filing a motion for this, that, and the other thing because I need more information. So as a CASA, just don't do that. CFS does that sometimes. Some of the attorneys do it. Don't do it as CASA.
Find information. I had in my first case. You will understand. You'll figure out what your dad is telling his attorney or not. And the attorney thinks they know dad real well, but I had gone to Dennis and I went to interview this dad's employer and found out that he had given his notice, and his intent was to take his kids and leave the state. And nobody knew that. We found it out when we interviewed his employer. But this particular attorney was very vehement that she knew exactly what her client was up to, and they had been touching base on everything. And I tell you what, you could hear a feather drop in that room when she found out her client had quit his job, given his notice, and was intending to leave with the kids. He was going to take them from a supervised visitation and go.
First time a client ever lied to an attorney.
I think so, but at that point, everything got shared before it came out in the report, because that's the kind of stuff, that's the kind of bomb you do not want to drop in your report in court. You want everybody to know ahead of time what's going on.
Yeah.
So.
Because that's just time wasted in court, otherwise you might as well start, right? I mean, looking at it.
Well, all that would have done is cause a huge uproar there as to how are we going to address this issue instead of, you know, everybody came knowing what was going on. But
And that's another point along those lines is like Polly mentioned that she wanted me to accompany her to go see this employer, and you're going to find yourself in positions where if you'd really like somebody to accompany you to whatever, and sometimes it might be you're not feeling safe going into a meeting with a parent who has been very violent or whatever, and if a caseworker, you can always get a caseworker or somebody to go with you, but if not, they call us and we'll go with you. So just be aware of where you're going, feel comfortable. If you're not feeling comfortable, don't do it. And if you're in a situation where it starts to feel uncomfortable, you exit. And from that point on, make sure you take one of us with you or somebody else.
Are parent interviews generally happening in their place of residence or wherever they are currently, or in a more neutral setting, or a combination of both, depending on the person?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You got it.
Wherever it's convenient. I get people to come to my office. Like the grandparents typically come bring the child when they're coming through town and spend time. Coffee shops.
Coffee shops.
I don't go to their house until I have a relationship with them.
And the other thing
And
is
sometimes I don't ever go to their house because I don't want it. I don't have one.
Yeah. And along the lines of confidentiality, again, it reminded me about going to people's, because some CASAs go to the parents' houses. They get that kind of a relationship and whatnot. This CASA lived out of town, was coming into town. Her husband and she were gonna go out to eat or something. So she wanted to swing by and see this mom. And so she pulled up to the driveway. He stayed in the car. She went up and knocked on the door. The woman looked out and saw her husband in the car. She was upset. And she really brought it to the treatment team's attention, to our attention when we had to deal with it. She's a great CASA, but she just wasn't thinking. You know, so you have to be very, very careful with whatever information you have, and when you're meeting folks, it's your stuff. It's not, you don't share it with anybody. And these people can be very sensitive to that.
Should be. Yeah, it's very personal and private.
Yeah. Well, and if they've been domestic violence or whatever, and they see somebody that they don't know out there, and they're going, where is this information? You know, it's bad stuff.
And you may run into your CASA kids or people in public too. I did this summer run into a child care provider, former, of the two little kids that I have, and she was on a visit at Splash, Montana with the kiddos, and I was there. It was uncomfortable for me, but I made a decision to not be around them. I went up and said hi to her separately, but I was there with family. And so I did not want to have to explain to my family, oh, that's my CASA case, just so you know, because that's private and confidential, and that's embarrassing to them. It can be to them. And so I discussed with her afterwards. I said, I wanted to let you know that I came over to say hi, but I didn't want to sit and chit-chat because our relationship is professional. And the little boy in my case is the same age as my son. Those two could have played together easily, but rambunctious little 3-year-olds, but it's just not professional. So, and you have to maintain a level of professionalism. So,
do you guys give out probably your cell phone numbers though, so they can get a hold of you? Obviously, so that's kind of a step in boundary.
I'd be careful with that. I have and actually, the parents on my case all have my cell phone number, and they're great, nobody, no problems, anything like that. One relative on my case is a problem, and I should have listened to more people. I mean, there will have been people who have contacted all of these people before you get involved, and listen to them. I mean, you can make a decision whether or not to give your cell phone number out. The truth of the matter is, if you're going to call them on your free time on your cell phone, they're going to get it. If you're calling their cell phone, because there's a caller ID, unless you block it.
From any number, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, thinking back, I probably should not have allowed her to have my cell phone number, but she would have gotten it anyway.
Yeah, make that decision right when you get your case.
You're going to go to the treatment team meeting,
pass on
everybody writes their name and numbers and addresses on that. It goes around the table. Everybody gets a copy.
So if we don't want to have our address out there, can we put CASA's address down?
Yeah.
Yes.
They don't ask for our address.
But that's what we suggested, that you give, if they want to contact you or send you anything, they send it through our office. And typically, if the parents don't have your number, which preferably they wouldn't, then they have ours. They call us, then we call you and say, this person's trying to get a hold of you, here's their number, if you care to, then it's up to you.
Oh, okay. What about office space? Do you guys have office space? Like, say somebody doesn't want to meet in a coffee shop because, okay.
Dennis, so, like emails, a lot of this stuff goes out on emails. Do you route it to your office?
Well,
We're
no,
gonna have a
but
email.
they
There's a Casa
CC,
email.
they CC us.
Okay, but if, you know, if you didn't want everybody in town having your email address for some reason, could.
There's a dedicated Casa email.
Everybody
Yeah,
has
Casa
Casa
You know, in
address.
addition,
Yeah,
I use
yeah.
the private one, but I don't
Okay,
care.
I didn't know
We'll have
that.
Yeah.
You all
We'll
get
have
a
personal
Casa
email.
email.
It's like M. Brian at Casa.
Okay.
So
A
it's,
lot of times where parents are gonna be in situations where they don't have email, so phone's gonna be
Right.
their only
Yeah.
communication.
You know, at some point, there's got to be a decision to get vested, and if you don't give them a number and they're calling and doing this stuff, you're losing a chance, because it's hard to
Yeah.
connect with these people.
And if
And
it's-
my own opinion is, you're taking a minor risk doing this. I think it's quantifiable and pretty small. I'm not aware of any.
Yeah.
There's probably been more realtors beat up than Casas over the
Well,
years.
and the relative in my case, it was worth it.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, it's,
It was-
you know, she's a pain, but everybody else, it's worth it to have that kind of access to everyone else. You know, the
Yeah, if
kids.
somebody's
would-
trying to get a hold of you, you should answer the phone.
Yeah.
Only within reasonable boundaries, though. I mean, again, you know, it is a volunteer service that you're offering, so I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't respond to a 3 o'clock
Right.
in the morning call. You know,
Right.
I know.
I think having those boundaries is important.
One thing that we're gonna ask you to do towards the end, and we'll have some role-playing going on. We're gonna have the kids come in and they're gonna interact, and we're gonna ask you to introduce yourself as a CASA. And what is a CASA? How do you explain that to an adult? And how do you explain that to one of these? So what I'd like to do is, and they struggle with it. I mean, and I haven't done much to help you. So I'm going to ask you guys, how do you introduce yourself as a CASA to an
I don't
adult?
remember how I introduced myself.
My kids are, well, I guess one of them's 8, so that was easy, but the other ones are so little, they didn't get it. So I just told them I was going to be, what I basically say to my kiddos is that I'm going to be the one who's going to be here for them consistently, because I don't plan on going anywhere unless, God forbid, something were to happen to me. But be there for them as kind of a friend / you know, somebody that's going to be consistent. And I say friend loosely to these kiddos because they're tiny. So you have to figure out what age you got, kiddo. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, so friend makes sense to them. And I'm not their attorney and so on and so forth. Now my 8-year-old, on the other hand, I was able to explain to her a little bit differently what I was there for as the eyes and the ears of the judge, which she understood that. But and obviously, if you have a baby, you're not going to be able to explain that. So.
Was your question to an adult?
Yeah, how do you,
Oh.
to both, one to a child and one to an adult, how do you explain your role? You kind of gave us a.
Yeah, well, again, what I say is I'm Mike Bryan. I'm a CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocate, and my role in the case is to protect the best interests of Susie, Bob, whomever. And I want, and this would work regardless who you're talking to, if you're talking to mom, dad, whatever. I'm very interested in your perspectives on how I can figure out what the best interests of the child is, and anything that you can do to help me make that assessment, I would like to hear. And if mom's or dad's getting a treatment plan, discussion, usually those have been established early on, more often than not, before we get involved, you know, and my role is going to be to help you get reunify with the child, because that's what the state, I guess more than the court, mandates. That's what the goal is, and I'm here to help you accomplish those goals if we're able to achieve that.
And I heard you say too that you were a volunteer.
Mhm.
I mean, that's a very important
Yeah.
aspect of it. You're a volunteer. Okay, thank you so much for coming and giving us more time.
Got one quick thing to say, because I think one thing maybe has gotten lost in the translation here, and that's with the CFS workers and the attorneys and all these other parties that are involved. most of them are fundamentally good people. You know, the CFS people have got 100 cases and they're overworked. The attorneys are doing the same thing. So we, as CASAs, are more vested in this because, you know, especially me, because I've got one case right now or two, you know, so I know more than these other folks. And you know, the CFS people, they're not getting paid very much and they're doing something they fundamentally believe in. You know, so they're not the enemy. They're trying to, you know, they've chosen a career path that doesn't pay well, and they're, you know, trying to do these things. So it is, if you're working in a spirit of trying to be cooperative, it will benefit you, and everybody there is trying to get to generally the same place.
Yeah, and just remember that. I mean,
You know,
like everybody has a lot of cases.
Probably the most ignorant guy in the courtroom is the judge. Truly. Because I only know what people put in front of me. And if there's things going on that I don't know about it. But each one of the judges in the 4th Judicial District, I can't remember how many DN cases we got, but it's in the hundreds. And so if I seem kind of dense and don't quite understand what the hell's going on, well, some of it's probably just my advancing age, but some of it's because I got so many balls juggling, and sometimes I only see these cases once every 3 or 4 months or 6 months. And so I wanted to put that in to say, you know, we're not always on top of things like we should be, and keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to piggyback on that. This was one of the biggest surprises to me when I went to court. I'm ready. You know, I got it all together, the adrenaline's running. And I get probably 5 minutes on most cases. I mean, not me personally, but the whole thing. Just the whole thing.
Except for in
And it's continued, or a new one is set in 3 months. And I was just deflated. I somehow thought it was going to be more like TV. It isn't. It's not at all. For the most part, 5 to 10 minutes.
Except for the show cause hearings, and they're a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the majority of cases are in and out, and that's it. Which is why when you go for the first time, you've got a 9 o'clock time and you've got a 1:30 time, and there might be 11 of you at 9 o'clock. So you never know exactly where you are on that list until you get there. But 5 to 10 minutes, that's it. In and out.
Again, thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.